Brown says, get that India. Big boy.
Maika Sivo! Call an ambulance! Maybe call a police! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell killer!
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020, joining me to break down the greatest game that ever was in the history of not just the NRL, but the ARL, rugby league, rugby union, every code of sport, is my good mate Sixties. Big fella. This, well, it certainly was one for the ages. Parramatta Eels 44, defeating the St George Illawarra Dragons 40, making St George, I believe, the greatest losers ever. Highest scoring losing team in the history of the game, or at least in the NRL era. 40 points and they lost. Eels up 44-12 at one point in this one. That evaporated very quickly. How did you see this one, big fella? And first of all, how you doing? Before I get too deep into the paint here, how you doing?
Well, after that introduction, mate, the facetious is strong in you, my son.
Just a little bit.
Oh, my goodness. Now, before I dive in any further, shout out to Debbie, one of our listeners who came and introduced herself to us today. I always say we appreciate our listeners coming and saying g'day at the podcast at Parramatta Leagues Club, the home of the Eels. And can I also put in a plug for our Leagues Club podcast, which, John, you're going to be posting as a standalone podcast, because we were able to talk to John Muggleton today about Scott Wisemantle, who John is very, very familiar with. And he talked us through the strengths that Scott Wisemantle has as a coach and how he sees him changing aspects of Parramatta's attack and backline play. And it really makes for interesting listening, and it was also about Muggleton breaking down what he sees as opportunities in rugby league and the way the game is played for any coaches that are prepared to try something a little bit different. So, yeah, have a listen to that. But, John, I haven't had too many games that I can recall where a win felt like a loss. And, I'm always one who's strong for saying, look, you just got to celebrate every single win that you get, no matter what happens, because you never know when the next win is going to come. So, don't be grumpy about any win. What supporters were put through in that last 10 minutes, you wouldn't wish upon anyone, in all honesty. Like, we went from great highs during that game because the team was playing tremendous football. And then we just saw, as we have done many times this year, a complete capitulation. We couldn't afford the game to go another 2 minutes, literally. Now, I know that the scoreline, in one sense, flattered the Dragons. Well, no, in a couple of senses. I mean, first of all, because all of their points came in about a 10-minute spree.
Yeah, 70 seconds, 76, 77 and 80th minutes for tries to Matty Fianai, who had a treble in that time and a double to Tyrell Sloan.
Yeah, so there was that aspect of it. There was also the aspect that the Eels left 10 points out there in goal kicking.
Yeah.
So it was 9 tries to 7. I mean, 16 tries. Come on. Look, I could put my hand up on it and let me praise myself, because in my punting tip today, I said, well, first of all, I was confident about an Eels win, which was paying $2.30 head to head. And then I said, but look, you've got two of the worst defensive teams in the competition here. I'm really confident that there'll be more than 61.5 points.
On paper, they'll if you're just taking season sort of not high watermarks, but averages, you're expecting 55, 56 points combined easily. And they definitely surpassed that. And look, cheeky little silver lining here. You talked about those 10 points Eels left out there. Zach Lomax, 6 from 7. The one miss he had was a declined kick a goal in the 80th minute. So that'll help balance the ledger a little bit next year, you'd hope. But yeah, the Eels didn't do Dejan any favours. I thought they had some chances to move the ball 3, 4, 5 metres in field when they scored on a number of occasions and opted not to for whatever reason. But yeah, this was a bizarre game. I don't know where to begin. I suppose we'll start with the scorer sheet. Eels 44 to the Dragons 40. Tries to Will Penasini to open, which I think you tipped, mate, in our preview podcast. Yep. Which was a nice variation on what we saw against Brisbane, where he ran behind the block that time. He was the front man here. So a nice little mix up there. Sivo bagging not just a treble, but becoming the fastest man in the history of the NRL, I believe, NRL era. Maybe it's all time to get to 100 tries. So that's a pretty impressive achievement. I think it's 114 games for 100 tries. Well, that was for the first try. So it's 114 games for 102 tries. So he had a great game, and that's obviously an incredible milestone. The captain, Quinton Gufferson, bagged the double. Jake Tungall scored a spectacular try in the right corner. Sean Lane and Dylan Brown also getting their name on the scorer sheet. Dejan 4 from 9, as you mentioned. Dragons, Connor Mewison scoring a try, but I am stumped as to how it was different to the no try to Bryce Cartwright. I thought they were mechanically exactly the same. One was a double movement, one wasn't apparently. Zach Lomax, and then the treble and double to Fianai of the Matthew variety and Tyrell Stone that we mentioned before. So lots and lots and lots of points. If you had a NRL fantasy or Supercoach fantasy final on the line this weekend and your game involved Eels or Dragons, it would have been one of the most manic roller coasters I've ever seen. There was some big scores bagged across the board here. In terms of team stats, 60s, Eels slightly ahead in possession, 52 to 48%. Equally timed possession in their favour, about a minute 26 it looks like. 85% completion rate for the Eels, that's an outstanding benchmark. Dragons at 75%, which to their credit means they pretty much didn't drop the ball after the first 20 minutes, because all they did in the first 20 minutes was drop the ball. Despite the close scoreline, Eels ahead in pretty much all key attacking stats, although crazy numbers here. 539 post-contact minutes for the Eels, 9 line breaks to 8, 38 tackle breaks to the Dragons, the Parramatta's 30, average set distance over 40 metres for both teams. Then we have 14 offloads to the Dragons, Parramatta's 11, so one of the rare times where the Eels have been out offloaded, but the Dragons were throwing the ball around like a hot potato during that 10-minute period of play where they stormed back into contention. And then defensively, Eels at 82.16% effective tackle rate. I don't think that's a season low watermark, unfortunately. I think we've been in the 70s at one point this year, if I recall correctly, but not good. Dragons somehow at 88.8% effective tackle rate, which is stunning considering the amount of points they leaked in. But as we'll talk about with some players in the video, I imagine that if you're not making the tackle at all, it doesn't go down as a missed tackle. And I think there's a couple of Eels that could be caught out in that regard today. 13 errors from St George, 7 from the Eels. Eels did give away 8 penalties here. A lot of penalties there. But the Dragons gave away 3 ruck infringements. The Parramatta's 2 combined inside 10 and ruck infringements. So they're the big stats there. Team stats, impressive efforts from Gufferson, Sivo. You got Dillbags. So 200 metres from the captain, 150 from Maika, 170 from Dill, 160 from Reg, 150 from Lane, 174 from Joffa, and then 177 from Moretti. So some big efforts there with the ball in hand. And then let's see if anyone actually stood out defensively, mate. Any Queen, we haven't got tackle efficiency up right now, but who's the pick of the litter here? Hands made 39 tackles but missed 5. Reg, 33 tackles, missed 3. Joffa, 24 tackles, missed 1. That's pretty solid right there. Moretti, 20 tackles, missed 1. So, yeah, a couple of the forwards there having good days in that regard. What about Sean Lane? 27 tackles, missed 2. Not bad. So some of the middles there really stepping up, and it's probably part of the reason why the Eels raced out to such a good lead was that they were dominating the ruck through those, through most of the game, except for the last 10 minutes.
Yeah. I've been trying to think about what it is that defined how bad Parramatta were defensively towards the end. I'm looking at the players. For a start, we still held a lead of something like about 18 or 20 points, and I was watching the players go back to the in goal, hands on hips, heads down, no energy. This is in this last 10 minutes. And I'm thinking, which team has a massive lead out of the two out there on the field? Who's playing with energy and who looks like they've got nothing left in them? It was completely arse about, like as far as what they were exuding to their opposition. Like St George were all about, we're coming to get you. And Parramatta, all the wind had gone out of the sails completely. Now, so there's that aspect of it. The other aspect of it that seems to be patently clear is that when teams come out of structured attack against us, and that's happening pretty much where they're playing catch-up football. Catch-up football against the Eels works because we can't defend on our edges against unstructured attack. Now, the Panthers did that. They were just throwing caution to the wind in that last 10
It felt
minutes.
very similar to the Penrith game, didn't it?
Yeah, and then in this game, it was all about just throwing caution to the wind. The Dragons were throwing in that last 10 minutes off our kickoffs. They were throwing the ball on their try line. When we did that last kickoff, to me, I was thinking, short kickoff. Like when I say short kickoff, I mean, like a 15, 20 metre kickoff, but a 15, 20 metre kickoff where we are right on top of them as they're catching the ball. You know what I mean? Like there was 7 seconds to go. You give them no chance to throw the ball. All right, you do a deep kickoff to them. They're going to chance their hand, and they've got all that space to chance their hand. I didn't even like our chances of defending them against them with 7 seconds on the clock. That's how it was. That's how I was feeling. I mean, Lord knows we weren't able to do anything with every other kickoff. Every other long kickoff, they're just throwing the ball wide. And as I said, it's like we are clueless to defend on our edges against unstructured attack. Like, and look at the number of times as well that they had that short kick going across field, that short cross field kick to the winger, just behind the line. We couldn't defend it. It was try time every time. Now, the thing was, the Dragons weren't doing that earlier in the game. The reason they weren't doing it earlier in the game is that they weren't at the point where they were playing catch-up football. They were sticking to their game plan. Their game plan probably should have been to hit our left more than what they did. But regardless, our defence against structures, all the typical out the back block plays, forward hit ups, all that sort of stuff. It's not a problem. But again, as soon as teams chance their hand against us, we are near on clueless. And I think the reason we're near on clueless is that we have individuals who defend poorly. In those situations, there are one-on-one misses. There are players that are caught out of position. And I don't think there's a great deal of faith in the person next to them in the defence line.
That is patently clear, isn't it? That once the system begins to fail and the opposition start getting a bit of wind in the sails, that you just see a complete lack of confidence shoulder to shoulder.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. As I said, it's like there all of a sudden there is no system, right? As soon as there's unstructure, we've got nothing, like literally nothing, and it doesn't. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, right now, it matters little. We're finishing at the bottom of the table. Do you know what? I don't care whether we finish last or second last. Today's game highlighted to me that we can't get a score where we are safe this season because, and Lord knows, the one thing that the Tigers can play is unstructured football, right? They don't have a great lot of discipline about their game. They don't have great defensive structures, but hey, if they're going to be chanced in their hand, I'd be almost backing them to run down any small lead if we had it next week. I mean, it might seem, again, it feels wrong to be so feeling negative after a win because, I mean, some of the football that we played today, I think we should be talking about that as well because there's a positive to be had there. But, there's that element of how I'm feeling right now that I can't wait till next year. I mean, obviously, a lot of us have been feeling that way for a while, but we just badly need to reset. We badly need to get some discipline in how we approach our football. And, it's hard to comprehend how we could look so good for so much of the game and look so bad in a condensed 5 to 10 minute period that can completely undo everything that happens in the game prior to that. Like it's almost mind boggling, John. I don't know. I haven't looked at any stats at the number of times that we've had a double point lead.
that won't be fun analysis. No, we've coughed up some impressive leads this year.
Yeah, sorry, I should say double digit lead. I'll get my language appropriate there. Yeah. So, John, can you please take over and talk about something positive for a moment so that I can get my mindset? I can listen to you talk positively and then I can get my mindset and give justice to some people in that Eels team that deserve praise.
I'm much more zen about this one than you. I was able to watch the comeback from the Dragons with, I wouldn't say calmness. There was some frustration, but I'd come to terms with the fact that the Eels, the pattern of behaviour had been established for weeks now where they've tried out really hard and they've at times dominated some teams, Brisbane, Penrith, and obviously today the St George. But when the Dragons came back, I was like, there could be a bit of trouble here. I didn't think it'd get that close, but in terms of the positives, mate, look, I think individually there were some fantastic efforts. Again, Quinton Gufferson led from the front here, or led from the back technically, but he had a fantastic game. Damn shame he couldn't get 2 more tries. We could have had the double treble with 2 players going to 100 tries. In the one club, one team, same game, but he had a fantastic game. And speaking of hitting that 100 try club, best game from Maika Sivo in a long time. 10 carries, 147 metres. Every run had intent, had venom, had impact. Zach Lomax squared him up with a withering hit on the goal line before his first try, and he just rolled through it and scored. Like there is seriously, how many wingers in the NRL score that try? Like,
no, he probably scored 2 tries today that other wingers don't.
The first and the third, because he absolutely demolished one of the Couchmans for his final try, and then the second one was the room service try. He literally just walked it in with the little finger waggle. But I thought defensively he was outstanding. Not to say he was perfect, but poor Blaze, just was getting cooked by whichever Phenom he was up against. It was like, initially it was Lomax playing in the centres, I think, and then they had the swap because of injuries. And Sivo was essentially defending 1v2 from the midfield for most of that game, and he was doing a really good job cutting off support runners and, containing Lomax and minimising the damage. Then we go to, Dylan Brown. I think Fox Sports had him down for 4 try assists. NRL.com's got him down for 3, 167 metres, great involvement. got tossed the fullback at the end of the game and had not his fault that he couldn't catch Tyrell Sloan, one of the genuine speeds of the game. Probably should have had Matty Fenai. Yeah, Matty Fenai putting a touch on one of those kicks, but he's not a fullback by trade, so I forgive him there. And then the three forwards, I think I pointed out at the start, Sean Lane with a really good game. Such a frustrating footballer to try and put a finger on, because there is stuff that Sean Lane does, like on a run-for-run basis, where defenses just really struggle with him. He's got that weird, unique build where he's a towering man that is also quite fixed set, generates a lot of post-contact meters. I thought it was excellent today. Reg was on fire. Likewise, last home game as an Eel, we believe, playing against what looked to be his future employers, and he made an impression. So well done to Reg. And then again, off the interchange, Joe Offengahi, outstanding again. I think it's going to be between him and Gufferson for KT this year, and Joe has really finished the season strong. And then off the interchange, Luca Moretti, there is a football there for Luca. He had some drops and errors earlier this year, mate. Went back to Reggie's, and he has come back really strong. So good to see him finishing the season with a strong home game performance. But individually, lots of great efforts, mate. It's just that the mental lapses, the confidence dropping, whether it's a conditioning issue too, which it's kind of hard to argue against given that it's been a bit of a consistent reoccurrence. But yeah, this team can play some seriously good football. We knew that. We always knew that. But they are so down on troops, and they can still kick some ass, but they can also kick their own ass. And that's what we saw today, where they played some champagne football. They played the Dragons off the park for 70 minutes. And then the final 10 minutes, absolutely manic scenes. We forgot how to tackle. We panicked. There was such a weird blend of passiveness in defense, and then randomly would start surging up to invite a kick in behind. So we sort of were completely out of lockstep, completely out of rhythm, and Ben Hunt did his best to take advantage of it. So, yeah, entertaining, certainly. I think the neutrals would have had a lot of fun with this game for the sine curve that it was at the end with all the oscillations and crazy ebbs and flows. But in a way, not even in a way, I am happy to get the win purely because the same pattern of behaviour has been so heartbreaking for them in the last month of football, outside of that Warriors win, where even in that game they let in a few tries at the end, but it was much more convincing in the final exchanges. But they managed to hold on here. They built up the most absurd buffer they could and somehow nearly squandered it. But yeah, like I'll tell
you where I'm frustrated, John, is that you just said we've seen this time and time again, right? So there's no learning that's gone on.
Oh, look,
it's just
fans that are upset about this. I will not hold it against them because, like you said, it's a pattern of behaviour now, and it points to issues both on the field and then in preparation. Going to conditioning and whatnot, and that's obviously a shared burden. Like you can point out individuals that are in charge of conditioning, but the reality is it's also a team responsibility there too.
Mate, they've done a full season, right? They're fit enough. What it comes down to, when you get to this 73rd minute, or like that we had against Penrith, the 70th minute that we had in this game, we had all the running up till then, right? What happens in that last 10 minutes? Because I'm watching it. I'm watching them with their hands on their hips and their heads down when they've got a big lead, right? And I saw that before in the reserve grade against when the Eels got ran down when they had that big lead against the Warriors.
Yep.
And they still had like a big lead. They'd only conceded 1 or 2 tries in the second half, and the heads were down and the hands were on the hips. And it was like they had the posture of losers, right? And if you ever watch a pre-season, you will hear the coaches and the senior players rip into anyone who puts their hands on their hips or their heads down. It's always stand up, get your hands off your hips, body language, right? The message that's there from body language, it's not just to the opposition, it's to each other, right? And as I said, these blokes are fit enough at this time of the year. They really are. It comes down to, like, I think that, and it's a simple thing. I think they expect to lose.
Yeah.
Like, and as soon as things go against them, the heads go down. It's almost like, here we go again. And we just need people at that stage to take control, you know. And I'm not sure what it is how they need to take control, whether it be a big hit or whether it be, you know, some effort on effort plays, and you know. But I keep coming back to the fact that however it is that we're playing, we cannot adjust to unstructured football being thrown at our edges in a team playing catch-up football at the end of the game, right? Because we are seeing it time and time again. And it's the same sort of thing, that teams just chance in their hand and it all opens up for them. Tackles that weren't missed are maybe missed. But you were talking about passive defence. See, I saw a bit of that right at the start. That first try by the Dragons, there were players standing there watching. I can't remember who the Dragons player was, but he was just standing there.
Yeah, he was just begging for someone to run off him.
Yeah, and no one was coming in and finishing him off. Now, what we were seeing later in the game was players standing in tackles and just throwing passes. Now, this is where I was saying about catch-up football. The Dragons towards the end were throwing offloads that you just wouldn't throw at other times of the game because they're just they're high risk, and it was going to a Dragons player. You know, someone was picking it up, and because it was just so unorthodox, there just seemed to be gaps for them to find in the Eels' defence, because there was a staggered defence, because it is this unstructured, crazy football that was being played. And that's why you see all of a sudden there's a surge in the ineffective tackles from the Eels towards the end, like missed, ineffective. All of a sudden, bang, huge surge in the numbers of that. And again, this might sound crazy to be reacting like this to a win, but, you know, hey, I sat through it. I just sat through it out of the stadium, and I was losing my mind. And I can tell you, I was not alone in losing my mind there. The fans were going through hell in those last few minutes, because we knew it was actually going to come down to less than a try difference with time still on the clock. It's what we felt was coming. It came, and, you know, there was sweet relief when the final siren went. But, you know, this was probably one of the few times where the siren went, the Eels team song was played, and a lot of people weren't singing. A lot of people were just getting their breath and trying to make sense of what just unfolded. Now, I do want to get into some praise, however, because it's unfair if I don't. Really unfair. And, you know, to be sitting up in the stand and you know, make a whole lot of criticisms. I'm not out there on the field. I'm not going through what those blokes are going through. So I really want to praise what happened out there with the workload of the players. I thought the pack did a great job.
Mm-hmm.
Campbell Gillard was a colossus today. 67 minutes played, 163 run meters, 33 tackles. Geez, you look at that and you go, why are we letting Reg go? I know why we're letting Reg go. Like, it's all about the cap and having money for players and having a bit of a balance in the pack in terms of mobility and size and all that sort of stuff. But, man, you know, the Dragons would have been looking at that today and thinking, yeah, this is a good purchase. Sean Lane, I know he ended up playing out on an edge, but he probably had one of the better games of this season. One crazy lost ball, but apart from that, 152 run meters. You mentioned the 27 tackles before. Joe Offengawi, 174 run meters. And I think I spoke about my conversation with Joe at the member event where he wasn't interested in any individual praise for his season this year. He just said, his individual form didn't matter. The team was losing. That's not the sort of football he wants to be playing. He's felt very, very strongly about the team not performing as they should have, and he's part of that team, so it just wasn't good enough for him. We had even like Maika Sivo, 25 minutes and 125 run meters.
Mm-hmm.
Luca Moretti, have already singled him out. 43 minutes, 177 run meters, 60 post contact. Even Ofahiki Ogden, 32 minutes, 114 run meters. So there's plenty to like about what was happening through the middle. I was really enjoying how we were digging in behind the ruck and working them over with those charges. And maybe it was a case of when the points were coming for us a little bit later that we started to get a bit loose as well. But, man, when we were working them over, I guess we had earned the right to get expansive with the football because their middles weren't coping with where we were taking the ball. So lots of praise that I can give for that. And the tries, you couldn't be disappointed with 9 tries being scored. I mean, if you're the Dragons, as we talked about in the pre-match podcast in Para Leagues with John Muggleton, if you're the Dragons, you have massive concerns anyway that all you're doing is making up numbers. Does that just about put them out of play for finals football, John? This loss today
Didn't score the one more converted try we needed to make it unofficially official, or officially unofficial, whichever you want to phrase that. But geez, it's not good timing for them, is it? They were dreadful, and they scored some flashy tries at the end when the worst or second worst team this year clocked off. But it doesn't put them in good stead for next week, and if they get past that to the finals. I think they still control their own destiny technically, with a match against the Canberra Raiders, I believe, is their schedule. But we just put 44 on them, and I think that definitely points towards them making up numbers if they do make the finals.
Yeah. Look, I'd say so as well. Now, let's go for a 3-2-1, mate, and then we'll very quickly talk about the NRLW in this instant reaction. What's your 3-2-1?
Plenty of worthy contenders today, even despite the capitulation at the end. But on a day, where he's been the subject fairly of a lot of criticism and scrutiny, but on a day where he cemented his place in NRL history, I think that Maika Sivo gets my free. Scored 2 very, very outstanding individual tries. Got the third by way of just a sharp backline movement. Defensively, he didn't get much help from his inside man, but made the most of it. And I thought that the runs, the ruck work and the tough runs were there today. And he's got plenty of stiff competition for those 3 points, Guffo and all those forwards they mentioned. But the fact that he iced a very impressive NRL record, I think will be the tiebreaker for me. So 3 points for Maika. And it feels nice to say that because he hasn't been in the points very much for a long time.
Mate, I'm going for 3 points for Big Reg.
Yeah.
I thought he was an absolute powerhouse through the middle. As I said, I was going to say through the first half, but we're talking about someone who played, what was it, 67 minutes, and
The vast majority of the game. Yep.
Yeah. So he gets my 3 points. I'll jump in with my two. I'm gonna follow your lead, and I've got 2 points for Maika Sivo. I thought it was probably the most complete game that I've seen from him, because I thought he shone in both sides of the game, attack and defence. And even though he's only registered with making 4 tackles, it was his presence as much as anything. With
Another try saver
being
this week. Knocked the ball out of future Eel Zach Lomax's hands as well.
Yep. So it was just he competed in all aspects of the game, I thought. So 2 points for him. Okay, John, you can go the 2 and the 1 now.
One, I'll give the Reg. Excellent game, and if that is his final home game as an Eel, as we do expect, then he signed off in outstanding fashion. 2 points. 2 points. Gosh, someone's missing out here that desperately deserves a point. So I think you'll probably go Joffa, so I'll go Luca. Coming back from injury with that quadricep strain, off the interchange, but thrown into the game early. I think he had 100 metres in the first half, despite coming off the bench. An intriguing player heading into next year under Jason Rolls. I think there's more to Luca Moretti still. He's not young by any means, but I believe he's 23, 24, 60s. Is that right?
Something like that.
Turned 24 this year. I think there's a bit of football here to be played for him still, and I thought he was awesome today. He had when the Eels were wilting a bit in defence, he was one of the few to make a play and race up and ragdoll Luciano Leilua, who caused us all sorts of grief in that final 10 minutes. And on top of that, he had a huge workload. So Joe Fungahi misses out, and it's pretty bullshit he does. So sorry, Joe.
Well, I was actually going to go for Luca Moretti. So because you've gone for Luca,
there you go.
I'm going to make sure that love is spread and that it goes to Joe Offengowie, who has continued the fine form individually that he's had this season. And although he doesn't want to acknowledge it himself, I think fans need to acknowledge it. I think he'll be very close in consideration with the Ken Thornett medal this year. I'm sure he's going to pick up a gong of some sort at the presentation night. So, that 1 point to him. Okay, John, let's now very quickly talk about the NRLW performance, because it's now a couple of disappointing performances back to back. It was an absolute shellacking that they received at the hands of the Dragons today. It's made even worse by what looks like a nasty injury to the knee of Kennedy Cherrington. There really wasn't too much to say that was positive about today. It looked like the Dragons were too fast, too strong, too decisive in their play, and that they were on a different level to the Eels. And it was really, really disappointing to see, because last week it looked like we were talking about the same aspects about the Newcastle Knights. Too strong, too fast, too athletic, too decisive in their attack. And I think that one of the areas that we appear to be struggling with is defending kicks. And I know there was a nasty bounce that came with for one of the tries, before one of the tries, where they got us a 6 again, where we weren't able to shut down a kick that was put in. But it just feels like there's things that Steve Georgalis will need to work on to turn things back around, because the Dragons had been struggling to get any wins. They were like one win from the first 5 rounds. And they, as I said, they handled it with ease. And look, I guess credit to them, because in the early part of the game, the Eels seemed to be throwing a lot of ammunition to throw at the Dragons in attack, and were coming up just short, like tackles half a metre out or even less. So it looked like there were points that were being left out there by the Eels, and credit to the Dragons for scrambling and for shutting it down. And those sorts of things can really sap the spirit, break the heart of any team that feels like they're throwing so much at their opponent and it's coming up short. And they, when it was their turn, they seemed to ice the opportunities that they had. And I'm not too sure where Steve Georgalis goes from this point. You feel as if maybe there are changes that need to be made, but we were done all over the park today. And I guess we do have to acknowledge that I thought Tegan Berry had a great game for the Dragons. I'm trying to think who the centre was over on their left side. That
Bobby
also,
Law.
Yeah,
I think she came back. She came back this week, and she snuffed out a few things defensively as well. She was very good. Look, anytime you complete at 68%, which is our Harvey Women's Premiership sort of benchmarks this year, you're going to be pressed to win a game. We coughed up the ball a lot. I think our wingers are struggling a bit, it's an interesting crossroads for this team now, 60s, because they started so well. 3-1 in the first month, could have easily been 4-0. Last week was a very weird game. We spoke about the disrupted or delayed kickoff and how Newcastle clearly handled that better. And then was that a case of those unique circumstances being the factor for that loss? Newcastle, or was it underlying issues that were going to be present this week too? And look, maybe it's a bit of both, but it's clear that there are some issues here for the team. But this is there's a series of hurdles here, individually and as a team, as a program, that they now need to clear if they want to push on and make something serious this season. And they've certainly been dealt some shit cards. Injuries to the Kennedy and Ruben Cherrington is just brutal. Two of your starting forwards, your 9 and your 13, ruled out for the season just on bad luck. Well, one was a bit of foul play for a hip drop tackle, but Kennedy today was just unfortunate. She was trying to get a leg underneath the potential try scorer, eventual try scorer, and create an anchor point, and it just went the wrong way. That was not foul play by any means. Some bad luck here, but these, if you want to be not necessarily even a champion team, because there's a lot of football to play to get to that point. You want to be the real deal or a legit team. Yeah, you're going to trip and stumble on the way there, but these are the challenges you got to pick yourself up from and find a way to overcome. And yeah, there's some serious questions now, and I'm not writing them off. They're down on troops. It's going to hurt if Kennedy's out for the season, as we suspect, because I believe they were doing the leg drop test on her, which is points towards a potential ACL. I don't know if it's been any official correspondence 60s. I'm having a gander. I can't see anything. But the leg drop test, leg drop test is one of the mechanical tests they'll do for a preliminary diagnosis for an ACL, and I think Maddie Stewart was out there doing that to her, and she was in a lot of pain. Like, she crawled away from that tackle and was in tears coming off. So you hate to see that, but back-to-back losses, and the team now needs to find a way to overcome the void that will be Kennedy's injury, and they've got to find a way to hold on to the ball, to be more effective in the red zone, and just more attention to detail. It's a term we bring up a lot, but that is what separates okay teams from good teams. And true attention to detail is what makes great teams, because you're competing on every play. That means you're awake to the details in every play. And we showed signs of that for 3-4 weeks in a row. So is it the congestion, the grind of the longer NRLW season getting to us? Maybe. But they're going to have to overcome that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, John, just finishing off The Jersey Flegg team was very much alive with hopes of finals football. They needed some results to go their way today. The first result went their way with the Bulldogs defeating Manly. So the Eels, in defeating the Dragons 40-10, leapfrogged Manly, and the other result that they need to go their way is for the Warriors to defeat the Sharks. And unfortunately, well, last I saw, the Sharks were leading 20-0.
And it still is 20-0, 45 minutes played in a 70-minute game per newsouthwalesrugbyleague.com.au. So they're going to need a miracle from this point. As we suspected, mate, one round short, one game behind.
Well, half a game short, 1 point.
Yeah.
They will finish 1 point out of the top five. And we should say it's a top five there. It's just... It's heartbreaking for them as a team, because the run of football that they've played in this back half of the season, where they've won 14 of their last 17 games, is just it's just been a phenomenal run, and they are the form team of the competition. They've beaten teams above them on the ladder, with the exception, I think, of the Raiders. And they're just, as I said, they're just going to fall one place short, 1 point short. And it's just that draw that the Sharks have had this season that's going to stand them in good stead and take them through to fifth place, and drop the Eels out of fifth place, despite the Eels' 40-10 victory today. So, look, I actually think they were a chance of winning this competition myself.
If they'd gotten there, I think they would have had every other team in the final series nervous.
Yeah, undoubtedly. So anyway, it's a shame to end the podcast on that disappointing note. It's not full time as yet, but it's it's not what we witnessed today. We won't see 30 points scored in the last 10 minutes by the Warriors. Okay, mate. Well, that just about wraps things up. We should give a shout out, of course, to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. A shout out, of course, to the home of the Eels, Parramatta Leagues Club. It's been another season of having that privilege of presenting the pre-game and occasional post-game live podcast with the Eels ambassadors, the legends of the club. Please have a listen, as I said, to the podcast that we've recorded with John Muggerlin. 40 will put that up for you to listen to. Thank you to all of our listeners. We've still got next week's podcasts. We still have the instant reaction next week. And of course, we will have podcasts going through to complete the NRLW season. And then once the season's over, we'll put out a weekly podcast just with any news that's going on, any talk about general rugby league matters, to take you through to our pre-season coverage of the Eels campaign for 2025. But yes, thank you to all of our listeners. Thank you again to those people, including today, Debbie, all of our listeners that make contact with us, send us, such encouraging messages, such positivity, and the people who go out of their way to come and say hello and to meet us. We really do thank you for your support. And mate, again, thank you for today. And as I always say, go you mighty Eels.